name is Annie Mustafa. I'm the program manager of the Resiliency and Business Innovation. This is an economic development funded grantee and from the Economic Development Administration, and one of many programs under the Puerto Rico Science, Technology and Research Trust. Welcome to this conference, one of many events that we have organized under the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and that will continue until Friday. I would like to invite, before we start, Gilberto Guevara, who is the Program Director and Senior Manager at the Puerto Rico Science, Technology and Research Trust, for a brief welcoming.
Thank you, Annie, and good morning to all. This is a pleasure knowing Dave Watkins, having met him many years ago in my work at the University of Puerto Rico, and also knowing Jose Ortiz and the big push that he has made with this pandemic new environment. You'll hear a success story of this particular company, and it'll be recorded so that you can view it and share the recording, the availability of the recording with others. So from the Resilient Business Innovation Program, as well as the Puerto Rico Science, Technology and Research Trust, welcome to our presenters today. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you, Gilberto. For today's conference, Partnering for Success, Alliances between Boricua entrepreneurs and Act 2022-60 investor, we will learn about the partnership between or behind Danum, why do many businesses partnerships fail, and why has Danum been successful in it? Some economic, pandemic, and cultural challenges among others as well. Our guest speakers for today are Dave Watkins, who is an Act 2022 decree holder and an investor, and Jose Ortiz, founder of Danum. So welcome. Some housekeeping announcements. This is an informal conversation, so feel free to write your question, raise your hand. And this presentation is being recorded and is in Facebook Live as well. We have other events. Feel free to take a look at them under www.prsciencetrust.org. Check under events, the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and you'll find a few of them there. With no further ado, let's start our conversation. Dave, Jose, happy to have you here.
Great to be here.
And so our public can better understand a little bit about how this was created. I would like you to talk a little bit about your background. Jose, you are an engineer, a graduate and an alumni from the University of Puerto Rico. And of course, Dave, besides being an Act 2022 degree holder, he was an investor, an entrepreneur before coming to the island. So if you can you can share a little bit about your background so we can then start about Danum.
Sure.
Who wants to start first?
Yeah. Go ahead, Jose, take it away.
Yeah. So a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So my name is Jose. I am the founder of Danum. I studied mechanical engineering in Maya West. During that term, basically I worked at companies like NASA, Eli Lilly, Kimberly-Clark, where I learned basically the corporate side and the engineering side and how things works. And after graduating, I basically went full time to Danum. Right? I met Dave during my, senior year, last year of college, and after that I went straight into Danum full time. And now we're here, 4 years later, I'm still here in Danum.
From engineer to entrepreneur, that happens.
Yeah.
That happens.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That's right.
So Dave, what about you?
Yeah, so I have been involved with Puerto Rico for about 30 years when I met my wife back at the University of Massachusetts. And I left school and actually worked in management consulting for a little while and software. And then I started a company in 1995 and I ended up selling it in 2010. It was a multi-million-dollar exit. And it gave me the opportunity to start to reinvent my career. And that was really in the form of helping startups and investing in, as an angel investor, but also just kind of growing companies. And what I learned was I love being an operational hands-on leader. That's kind of what I like to do. So I moved to the island in 2015 And I really had an opportunity to basically meet a ton of people, be involved as a mentor in different things like Parallel 18 and invest in some mentorship programs around the island. And I met Jose. And obviously, you know, when you're investing and you're looking at startups and you're looking at opportunities where you could help, you look for really talented people. And that's how I met Annie as well. So talented people are really the trick to the trade. And I think I've amassed a lot of great relationships and seeking those talented people.
Well, thank you. So you've been involved here not only because of the decrees, but you really have invested yourself here in Puerto Rico, serving as mentor and of course sharing your knowledge with other people. So you come from Boston and you're bringing all of that knowledge, technology, and way of doing business there, that you've been trying to, you know, to share that and help some Puerto Ricans here. As your partnership, how did it start? So you met what is it, Parallel 18, and how did you decide to create this or invest, Dave? How do you decide to invest in Jose?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, Jose and I, we, like any good entrepreneurs, Jose, how many things do we fail at? At least a couple, right?
Yeah, at least a couple. We met at a job fair.
Yeah, we met at a job fair. So I literally was out there handing out, you know, my card, and I was taking resumes. I think we had a card in the Mayaguez job fair, and I met Jose. He had actually started a company, and he was actually a couple of companies, and we were talking about whether or not those made sense. And push came to shove, and you know, I started a company, and he helped try to kind of join it and work with it. But then Dami and Bite came along, and that's where it really started to take off. And personally, what I saw was an opportunity. It was a great idea. It was before, you know, really people had done delivery on the island, and I said, this is an interesting thing to be involved with. And when I was introduced to Jose, he had a bunch of people that he was working with, another group of talented people. And it was at the university, and it was an opportunity to invest in him as a person and the ideas that he had, and kind of the rest is history. Dami and Bite kind of was born, thinking on, I would say it was a good back of the napkin conversation.
Yes.
You know, and it evolved to, you know, putting a bunch of money into something and really launching it, and a lot of challenging times, right?
And what is Diamond Bite? I mean, is Diamond Bite a service company? Is it a technology company? Tell us, what is Diamond Bite?
So basically, we have two main products, right? We have the e-commerce app, where we offer the e-commerce platform to businesses, and also we have the logistics service, right, where we find job to drivers. We bring logistics to third companies, basically, that are not in the app. They want to do their own delivery, but they don't have the drivers, they don't have the logistics system, so they basically license our service to use our drivers. So we have like the logistics system and the e-commerce. The app basically is the mix of both of them, right? Where you order through the app and you have the e-commerce stores, and we have the same drivers who deliver any kind of food or groceries, medicine. We're expanding to other stuff too. So like our idea is to do logistics of everything, right? Like we can bring everything from A to B in a on-demand fashion, right? To bring that to Puerto Rico and the whole island. That's the main goal.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what's unique about that is just, you know, culturally, the idea of logistics in Puerto Rico requires a whole understanding of the culture, an understanding of just what it means to do customer service. It's very different from other places in the world. And without that appreciation, it's just difficult to keep a company and keep your customers happy, right? And I think that was a significant void that we saw in the marketplace, independent of the competitors that were there. So
you started Diamond Bite pre-pandemia, you know, and Jose, because this is the week of the, you know, global entrepreneurship. Did you see yourself at some point while you were an engineer to become an entrepreneur?
To be honest, yes. Because during my college year, I helped found an entrepreneur organization, a platform, I was building like any other companies. I had my own 3D printer where I provided services for designing and for creating like stuff. I also sold knife at one point, so I was to have like those selling skills.
Cutco.
Yeah, I also sold Cutco knife. That's where I got the selling skills. So I got like the selling skills, the engineer part, and the entrepreneurship business side, right? Like during my whole college years. And yeah, like I saw myself as an entrepreneur after I graduated because like as I said, I work at NASA as a designer. I work at Eli Lilly as a quality engineer. I work at Kimberly Clark as a process engineer too. So I had like the manufacturing kind of experience that I like, okay, how to maintain a team, how to get a team motivated, how to solve problems, right? Like that's what an engineer do, solve problems and solving big problems, right? So after that, like I saw myself like, okay, I want to solve a big problem for the island. And I wanted to also leave a legacy in the island too. And like to bring something like from nothing to big. So I saw myself like doing those years, like being entrepreneur.
So this process, you know, well, you met Dave and probably you've got, you know, share other failed enterprises, not enterprises, but other projects, right? That evolve, right? How was this, you know, approach that it went like, okay, let's do this? Was there like, okay, let's do this, you know?
Yeah, I can tell you. I think, I mean, Jose I was sitting in my office, and Jose came running in because we were working on a bunch of things, and they kind of weren't working, right? It was like we were learning to fail on a few things, and then Jose came running into the office. He's like, look, I got this literally the best idea on the planet, and it was basically a piece of paper, looked like the back of a napkin, and he pitched it. You know, he pitched it real time, and I said, let's go for it, right? So it was kind of like, hey, let's just try it. And it was, I don't know that there was a lot of planning that we went through it, but
No, I don't think so. Like, because Damon Bite, it was pre-Maria that I started. Like it was not like pre-pandemic, it was pre-pandemic, but also pre-Maria, right? Like that we started it. And like, and that's where basically, I started in 2017, then Maria came, I had to stop. I focus on other projects like, well, I brought logistic intelligence to Chef Jose Andre and like help him like to deliver the 3.2 million meals around the island. And creating like that whole system of tracking food and tracking like where did we like already brought food to those towns. The goal was to bring food to every town, right? We delivered 3.2 million meals. Was a lot. And after that, like in January 2018, I went back on like Mumbai because like the internet came again, gas went again because when Maria came, no internet, no gas, no food, so it was no business basically. Without internet, the app cannot run. So like it was like I had to start again in 2018, and then we basically after that the pandemic came, and that helped us a lot on like helping people in their houses to bring them the stuff that they need without them getting outside, right? So like we helped them a lot on these pandemic terms.
Yeah, what was really cool is, you know, we went into this thinking we could hire thousands of people, and my personal intention was I wanted to be impactful with whatever dollars I was gonna personally spend in building a company. How many people could we possibly bring on board? And Jose, you've hired thousands of people on the island over the course. I think it's probably, if you think of all of the startups in the community, it's probably the one that's hired, you know, at least in the top 2 or 3, hired the most people and have built the biggest payroll of probably all the startups out there. And I think that was a significant undertaking.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because, you know, when a company starts, you know, and you go for the banks and they ask you for these business plans for 5 years, and looks like that Mumbai has changed like every year. They have to change and adapt to the new situations. So, you know, we want to, during this, you know, Global Entrepreneurship Week, also encourage people that they have to be flexible enough to change and adapt to the new challenges ahead and don't give up. Was there a time that you guys gave up?
Jose, when Jose first bought those motorcycles, So we thought we'd be delivering food on motorcycles or like actually scooters, right? So he goes out and buys 3 scooters and then realized that everybody was scared to drive them because Puerto Rico traffic is scary, right? So that was like, uh-oh, we can't do the business that way.
Okay, so you have identified opportunities as well to, you know, to kind of expand and to integrate that, right, as well?
Yeah. Like the service of the logistics service was created in 2 weeks after the pandemic started, right? Like 2 weeks after the pandemic started, like all the customers start calling, I need delivery. So I needed to scale up like 5 times, like in 2 weeks. Because like of all the calls that we got, and like we invented new products during those 2 weeks in order to fulfill the needs of the customer that we're calling. So like we adjust pretty fast, and like we have the team that adjust and create solutions like for like in a fast-paced way, right? In a startup way, basically.
And billboards made it explode too. I think we had you had a pivot point.
Yeah.
Which the company suddenly got brand recognition, and before you know it, the apps were being downloaded like crazy, right?
Yep.
And that was a lot of fun to watch happen. Sorry, Annie.
No, it's okay. Just, you know, it's your show here. So this looks like this partnership between you have been for a longer time and not necessarily started because specifically for Mumbai, right? So why do you think yours was succeeded versus probably other partnerships that fail?
Well, you know, Jose has got a core group of people that support him, and it makes a difference. I mean, he's got a strong family structure, and dad, his mom, everybody. I mean, I think we've all, you know, been involved, and we've had friends involved, and I think, you know, it meant a lot to have friends and family behind people, because there's so many times where you're just like, I've had enough of this thing, I can't do it anymore, and your family's like, get back in there, right? You know, and I think that, but I think in general, we just talk it out. I mean, I don't know that we've ever had, I mean, personally, I don't think we've ever had a fight about anything.
No, I don't know. I don't think so neither. I think like it helps a lot that Dave basically already passed through this, creating his whole business from scratch. So like I evaluate like his opinion, like he basically created it from scratch and sold it at a multi-million-dollar. So he have that whole experience. So like I know that it's possible, and I know like his feedback is something that he has already passed for it, right? Like, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I guess we don't see any limits, right? So the one thing that is a little different culturally, you know, when you establish a startup in the States, or at least the Boston area, it's, you know, we think, at least I thought in terms of, I can grow something to be $1 billion in value, and that's not necessarily, and grow forever and become as big as I want to be, and identify as many customers as possible. And I think that's a lot of that symbiotic relationship we have is one where Jose can see some of that, right? He sees the opportunity as being huge and bigger and can spread everywhere around the world. And I think that's his depth and capacity to understand the bigger opportunity for his business.
Okay, so let's start with more, you know, business questions. Next January 1st, you know, the minimum wage will go up to $8.50 per hour, and a year later will go up to $9.25 per hour. How will this affect specifically your business or other business? And you have a lot of people that are temporarily contractors. What is your main kind of employees that you have?
So right now we have around 1,000 active drivers per month.
Wow.
Yeah, we have around the whole island. We are around 16 people in the headquarters, call centers and like all that thing. Like, so yeah, I believe like it should be higher, the minimum wage. Like it was about time. Like it's gonna make the prices like basically go up, right? Like, because in our sense, we show the prices of the restaurant. So the restaurants also are gonna go high. And also the delivery fee. So basically that's gonna maybe push like the prices to go up. That we already have been seeing it, right? Like everything has been growing like since January, right? Since June, July, summer. So like in January, it's gonna like go high, and like, it's gonna keep going like up during the next 3 years. We believe like in higher pace, right? Like we do not have anyone like here like paying the minimum wage right now. So it's good for the business. It's just like it's gonna make food cost more, right? Like because it's higher production cost. So yeah.
But hey, anything that can improve the lives of people who are actually working, it's great. I think it's good that we're doing it.
Do you want to talk a little bit about when you started, about the competition, or you started here first on the famous competition, right? How
Jose,
did that affected you?
You don't have any competition, Jose, do you? No.
Oh yeah. So, yeah, so basically we have like 3 main competitors here in the island, right? We differentiate ourselves because of our customer service, right? Like we have people answering the phone when they call, and like we are basically like trying to maintain that cultural, the cultural, I don't know, like
a human touch.
Human touch, like to keep people here like using the app, right? Like and looking also to accommodate different kind of markets, right? Like not only the young professional, but also the elderly people, but also like the young people too. Like so accommodating to like all the markets, right? And each market have different needs and different ways to communicate, right? So it's not everything to a bot. So each market has their own like kind of human touch. So like that's our main difference, and also that we are the biggest one, right? Like in terms of territory, right? We are in Arecibo, we are in Ponce, we are in Mayagüez. Right now we are the one who have more territories and more restaurants around the island right now.
Okay.
Boy, I was just going to say one thing, Annie. It's just in a world where there's a lot of these services popping up everywhere, and they're consolidating and getting acquired. The biggest challenge out there is customer service. I mean, honestly, I think most of these firms just forget there are people behind things. I mean, try to make a phone call to anybody, right? When you have a problem, you can't talk to a person and say, help me solve this problem, right? And that's a big deal. Just being able to talk to somebody and say, not just empathy, but they can actually follow through on it.
Hey, there's an opportunity there, right?
Right.
So build something with, humans. Yes, we have humans.
Exactly.
We use humans. So basically, by the time when we arranged this, there were a lot of executive orders, and they were all, changing. But if there's something that has not changed yet, which is the negative testing for people going to the restaurants, and has this been able to increase the amount of business, because people are going less to the restaurants, and they are doing more things to delivery, or want more things delivered to them?
I think maybe Jose froze.
Jose, you there?
Well, I'll just tell you the challenge with executive orders, at least what I've seen, is just they have kept people inside, and they use the service more, right? So, but what's interesting is you would think, and it's counterintuitive that, hey, after the executive order, things would just stop. People would stop using these services. And I think what Jose has seen is that the actual customer gets used to this way of buying things, right? They no longer go out and do that trip to the restaurant. They no longer go out and get that from the store. They rely on these services to bring it to their door, and they worry about other things in life. So I think we've seen some of that, Jose, right?
Yeah. Basically, like so right now, like it's not like going as before, right? Like it's just like going down, but like it's still high. It's still higher than before COVID, right? Like people using the service, and it was normal like to see that. Right now, like people in Puerto Rico like just adapted to to getting the groceries like through the online, to getting like all their stuff like fast. And we have seen it with Amazon, right? Like when people like the 2-day shipping because Amazon Prime, because it's 2 days. So people want things to receive it faster and faster, like through the years. So they want to, like, every year passes, they want more things more faster in their house.
So there are a lot of, there are a few, Jose? Okay. So there are a lot of challenges in your industry, right? Like, for example, you contract a lot of drivers. So the gas going up, of course, the energy is going up, inflation is going up. The supply chain, of course, is a challenge as well. How does this affect the Mumbai?
So I can help fill that in while Jose kind of rejoins us. By the way, I'll tell you, an infrastructure.
Infrastructure, of course.
Infrastructure.
And traffic jams.
And traffic jams.
And traffic jams.
And power, and all of these things affect the ability for these organizations and startups around the island to scale. And so Damian Bike's not like any other. It's we're all struggling to figure out a path forward, and I think there's so much unknown right now in terms of what is really going to happen and whether this is going to just work its way through the system by June, July of next year, or is this really kind of the MO? Is this the way we're going to understand how the world operates? And that's with higher costs of energy and higher labor costs, and how are you going to pass that on to the consumer? Because the consumers aren't really ready for the sticker shock of some of these costs, and it's really thinking and reflecting on really what are people willing to pay for a service, and how does that affect the whole supply chain? So I see that our margins will short-term contract and then longer-term expand, because as consumers get used to it, their wages are going to go up, their salaries are going to go up, and their participation in the ecosystem, will affect them directly, and they'll have more capacity to actually pay for things.
This is Jose.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry, I broke up.
No, we have you here again. So this is a tricky question, maybe, Dave. And well, you come from Boston, and you are probably used to a certain ways of doing things. How does that compare? Of have Mumbai been easier to do in Boston? We have been the same with the challenges, maybe in the time that it was created. How are the cultural differences in terms of kind of mindset, business set, or way of doing things here in Puerto Rico? I know it's a lot of challenges alone, doing, getting the permits and everything. So how do you compare that?
It was dramatic when I first came to the island. It's evolved. So my shock was that, you couldn't really talk to a lot of people who could spell startup when I first came, right? When you went and talked to people in the legal community about what it meant to have stock and what it meant to have debt and all of those wonderful terms, it was difficult to find people in the legal systems that knew that accountants that knew that. I mean, they knew
banks.
Yeah, it was. And so the struggle is we would have conversations with a lot of the startups about, what type of company should they form? Should it be an LLC? Should it be a C corporation? And they would get advice from all of these professionals that weren't consistent with, for example, in the States, with basically raising a bunch of money. So most people were used to, I build this bootstrap, I rely on my family money, and this is the way I move forward. And so I don't really worry about the corporate structure except for tax purposes. But in the world that I came from, it was, you build it so that you can have lots of investors and you can grow with money. And when it means growing with money, you've got to have the whole infrastructure and the documentation, the paperwork. And so a lot of those things came into play, at least in terms of my process. And I think the other piece that was different was that people tend to be a little more confined with the borders of the island in terms of how they saw the market opportunities. And I think in terms of the whole world, and my limits are how many languages can I translate to? right? So it was less about an island, it was about billions of people. And do I really want to do Hangul so I can, or, you know, double byte characters in China? That was more my concern than worrying about, you know, can I really support just Ponce and San Juan, right? So just a different type of perspective.
So people confuse a lot, you know, businesses with the startups. And some, you know, specifically the banks will ask you for a business plan, 5 years, you know, and instead of trying to figure out how the business model canvas work, which is the exploration to see if this idea is going to work, right? So do you see in general, do you see in the island, because you've been here for a long time and you have seen it evolve, and I've seen it evolve, as well as I see Victor that is here with us, have seen it evolve for the many years. And maybe we're more open for supporting this status, but still there's a long way to go. So when you came here, I know it should have been a shock. How shocked were you, you know, and how have you seen that transition, that people are more accepting of a startups, as you were saying, to a more than a business, or following, you know, like a business model?
First, I think it's awesome. It's given a lot of hope. I mean, 1 in every 3 people are entrepreneurs. I think one interesting thing is you either are born an entrepreneur, and I hate to say it, but you can't really become one, right? So it's and that's, they've got a bunch of psychoanalysis things that actually have proven some of that. But the ecosystem that exists in Puerto Rico, I mean, the banks have been great. You know, banks like Banco Popular have supported seed fund programs with Grupo Guayacán, the ICOR programs that Guayacán runs, those education infrastructures, the startup community in Mayagüez. I've seen the universities evolve, Sagrado. They've done great jobs at actually putting in these accelerator programs and these incubator programs to give people at least a framework of how to do some of this. And I think that I've seen a lot of that develop over time. And there've been a lot of influences by pulling people from other parts of the world through Parallel 18, bringing them to the island and influencing how people think about the problem set. So it's brought people into the culture, and it's also exposed people to different ways of doing things. And I think we've seen a lot of that happen over time. In general, banks are not the best way to fund your startup unless you have a real revenue stream that you can count on. They don't really like to fund ideas, right? So they're a great medium once you have something and you can establish credit. You know, in a perfect world, you're relying on people like me, on seed funds that exist in the marketplace, who are willing to put, you know, upwards of $100,000 to $500,000 into things and let them evolve to a point where you can do an A round. And I think that where the marketplace of Puerto Rico really still needs to evolve to is a reliable structure that once you've done the seed rounds for companies and once you've really established them, a true A round, which means that you're investing $1 million to $2 million in a company that has traction. And there isn't a lot of that infrastructure built yet.
So do you think that you know, Puerto Rico still, a lot of people are still thinking small, right?
I don't know that it's small, it's just exits. So people don't understand how to get the rate of return, and I wouldn't say it's small in as much as
small thinking, you know, not like you were saying, like you were thinking about the other languages, while, you know, probably we're just expecting, okay, where can I, you know, get to Ponce or to Jayuya, for example.
Right. Well, who am I going to sell this thing to? And, you know, I go over to this guy or that guy, and I'm going to try to make an exit. But really, you know, the opportunity is any multinational corporation is an exit strategy for any of the organizations. I always believe that if you're going to start a company or get involved in something, it's what's the exit plan? That's your first thought. Forget about what you're going to make, because you're smart enough to figure it out. It's like, how are you going to exit this thing? And what are you going to make sure that you have in place that that's an easy process? And I think that's the small thinking. It's most people really build these to run them forever. And that's not necessarily an investor's dream.
Is that a cultural thing? Is that a cultural thing?
I think it's the stage of our market in Puerto Rico, less than a cultural thing. I think right now our market stage is we don't have a lot of exits. We don't have a lot of people saying, I'm going to sell my company to somebody.
Well, I mean, when I say that in part of a cultural, because when you create something, it's kind of your baby, you know, and thinking about an exit it's like, oh, well, I'm going to give away my baby, you know.
Well,
So
certainly
is that like, do you see that more here in Puerto Rico than probably in Boston, you know, or other places that you've been? You know, when I keep my baby.
No, there's a lot of family-owned businesses, right? I mean, the truth is, I can tell you, you know, in a lot of the mentoring programs I've been in, you know, you're in front of a second or third generation manager of their family company, and they can't tell their parents they want to sell it. You know, this is something that they're supposed to pass on to the next 3 generations. So, you know, asking an investor like me to kind of hang out for like the next 60 years is not necessarily my investment thesis, right? So yes, there's a bit of that. You know, it's not necessarily a good thing to sell a family business. It's really about perpetuating it and making it available to the next generations.
So it's more like an emotional thing here.
Definitely emotional and cultural. It's part of the culture. You know, it's what you pass on to your kids and what they
you're expected to continue.
And even the inheritance laws are built like that, right? So, you know, the inheritance laws are, you know, the kids are part of it with the spouse. It's different than stateside, which is, you know, the inheritance doesn't work like that. So, yes.
Jose, what have you learned from Dave? You've got a great, you know, partner and mentor.
Yeah, like, to be honest, I've learned a lot. Like, especially during the tough like moments, right? Like how to keep going, like knowing that it's normal, that like, so like trying to do it. So seeing like problems as good, like good problems and bad problems you have, right? Like you're always gonna have problems, right? But some of them are gonna be good ones, some of them are gonna be bad, right? And how to solve them. And like, I'm being there, and like, I'm just being there, like when I need it, right? Like, when the company have any problems, or like I need any decisions to do, like having his feedback and learning like how he thinks, right? Like he always have like a different perspective, like on how to solve stuff. So like there's one point that I think like, okay, how would they think for solving these problems? So like if you have a different kind of perspective, like how can we like take things for advantage, right? Like for the company advantage, and like for also for the benefit of the employees, and how to think like to maintain all the parts like happy, right? Like and maybe and sometimes we have to sacrifice something, but like it's basically keep it going, right? Like knowing how to keep going and not to give up is one of the basically things that like he's been pushing me like on that part. Like I learned a lot more on the business side, like how the corporation and taxes and like how to structure all the management and like all that big side. I learned about from him.
So you've worked together in different, you know, projects that have, you know, take another turn, and and you've come probably approach him and, you know, tell him about your new baby. The first time that Dave probably told you your baby is ugly, you know, that's not gonna look good. How did you feel that, you know, because, you know, Puerto Ricans, again, we are a little bit more emotional and we take things personal. So, and this is a cultural thing, right? So did you feel that way? How do you feel when, you know, Dave told you, hey, that baby is pretty ugly?
Is that so? In my case, like as Dave said before, like we have been through different startup before. So like I lost that, like in one point you lost the connection of, oh, this is my baby, this is mine. No, like I already created like 10 businesses before. So like it's, and as they say, like the goal is to sell the business, right? Like the goal like is to have an exit plan. When he told me that, I took it as feedback, right? Like it's good feedback. And I also like did interviews, and with Guayacan that they basically tell us to go do 100 interviews, right? Go hear about the feedback of the customer. So basically you have to get like you have to get normal with having that bad feedback, just like taking it from him, right? Like it's like, okay, I need to fix it, right? Like I need to fix stuff. I need to redesign it, and we designed a new app, and we launched it in the last year, right?
Dave, you as an investor and angel capital, you know, how do you see when you tell somebody, because you have a, you know, you kind of have a connection and you feel comfortable with each other saying, you know, the real truth or the ugly truth, right? So, but probably you have told somebody or other people, you know, your baby is kind of ugly, or, you know, How do you see that reaction, and maybe compare that with probably other people in other parts of the world?
You know, it is very cultural, and you have to deliver that message with a lot of with kid gloves. It's important to know who you're talking to and how they're going to react. Because honestly, you know, my job is to make people better, and it's to put them on my shoulders, not to knock them down, right? And so if you're going to put somebody on your shoulders, you really think about how are they going to react to this, and is it a means to an end, right? So you know, when I set up an office in Thailand, if I were to have the kind of conversations that I've had with Jose, those people would quit and cower, and they might leave, and they might, you know, go back to living on their family's farm. They wouldn't have come back and been programmers, right? Asia is very different than Europe or Poland. You know, you've got different cultures there that, you know, in Poland, the expectation is a lot more friction in terms of the management style. And in London, it's a lot more, it's more normalized. It's less of a salesy approach, and it's much more, you know, it's much more subdued in how you approach and deliver the message to people. In Puerto Rico, there's a little more emotion. As a matter of fact, if you don't project the emotion, the theory, you know, the feeling is that you really aren't, you know, it's really not that important. It's not a critical thing. And I found that culturally, if I was trying to get my message across that, you know, hey, you're not thinking big enough, there's not a bigger opportunity, it's to be much more emotional, much more provocative in what I say, and a little more shocking. The shock and awe tends to because there's so much emotion, and you just have to get above the noise. And so honestly, it's a bit of a science and a sense and a feeling for people. And if you're going to be good at angel investing and mentoring, you've got to have a lot of antennas up. So you're listening and you're receiving and sending at the same time. You've got to really be able to interpret and listen to what people are telling you, because it's really never one single way to do something. There's always 4 or 5 angles, and what's the right one for the person you're talking to. I think Annie may have frozen too.
Yeah, I think that Annie is frozen.
See, the infrastructure is really a critical thing that we've got to fix in Puerto Rico. Really do. You know, the power grid is one thing, but the internet for us to really
I'm back. I think it was me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, I'm back.
No, it's
yeah,
okay.
well, you know.
I was just griping about the internet and power, and you know, we gotta fix these things.
That's like you know, the perfect example, right? There you have it. That was a real life example, so you know, it was on the sketch.
That's right. That's right.
So, but I was going to mention, Dave, not all angel investors probably have the empathy that you have. Some of them just have or want, you know, for what I can get, though that's one of the main ideas, right? What I can get in return, right? But not everybody think like you. So, Jose, you are lucky, right? To have somebody like him.
I got lucky. At the same time, like that's a recommendation that I gave to other startups, like not because the other person have money, it's a good fit for you. So it basically like also like it's a marriage, right? So you have to interview him too. You have to interview the investor. You have to see like what's the goal, and like to just basically like it's basically like a marriage that you're gonna do for the next years. So like it's both sides, right? Like the investor is looking to see if his money is gonna be safe, but the startup is looking to see if he's gonna make us grow, right? Like if he's gonna like bring knowledge to the company and like how that grows. So it's both sides. That relationship is also both sided. Now that's a recommendation that I gave to other startups. Like not because the other person have a lot of money, it does mean that it's a good fit for you. So like you have to interview him.
That's a great recommendation, Jose, because you know some people when they are doing their startups, they just forget that you know you can choose who you want to do business with, right? Or who you want to be your partner with. So a little bit also going back to the way of you know doing business here in Puerto Rico. And by the way, I remind you that if there's somebody that would like to ask a question, you can write it or you can raise your hand, and feel free. This is a very relaxed conversation between friends. Oh, I see a hand. Victor, go ahead. You're muted.
You're in mute, Victor.
That's the favorite parts of Zoom meetings. You're muted.
Hear me
There
now?
you go. Yes,
Okay,
we can hear you.
I have an observation and a question. I've had some years' experience in business development, and I have found that there are three basic scenarios in partnering. Very often, in one case, you have two uninitiated persons, two beginners, wanting to partner, and they've had no experience. The second scenario is that one partner has had experience and the other has had no experience, so that's another dynamic. And the third is that both parties have had experience. I'm very impressed by what Dave brings to this partnership because of his past experience and resources and whatever else. Those are good indicators that this project will be successful. My question has to do with something basic too. One very often likes to prepare a business plan or suggest a collaboration plan or an implementation plan with good metrics. And I'm wondering if the company or the project, I'm sure they have some implementation plan, but how well do they follow it? How much do they change? And what are the metrics, and how do they follow the metrics?
Sure. So Victor, I'll tell you, my experience with plans are, they're if you say it out in the startup world right now of planning and business planning, you're called old-fashioned. It's kind of an interesting thing, right? And honestly, I never look at a plan as just a plan. I actually look at it a way of thinking, right? Of understanding how a person thinks and how a person can evolve a set of decisions based on looking at a map in a different way, right? It's numbers, it's words, and so that thinking part of what you get from a great planning exercise is really what I expect people to have. So, it doesn't really matter to me the medium, right? It's can I infer and understand the thought process, and that's critical to me. And so I think in terms of what the KPIs that I set up personally for my investment thesis are basic, right? I look for, over the course of 3 to 5 years, my expectation is to be in a position where I can get a 10x on a minimum of 10 times the money that I invest into a company. And I think in terms of, is there enough cash flow in this company that it will sustain itself without diluting me to death, right? So the biggest challenge is you put your money in and there's so much cash that's needed that you become a very small part of a very big play. So unless you're very early into something, and so those are some of my simple KPIs that I think cash is the biggest challenge of any good startup. Revenue, growth, they're all very interesting to me, but the most important thing is, can you sustain something? Can you evolve something without running out of cash? And how much more cash will you need to really realize the biggest potential? But Jose, I know you've done a lot with KPIs in terms of operating your business.
He's an engineer.
Yeah, and then
so that's a good mix.
He lives by him. No, it's great.
Jose, do you feel that that you've been like being hit with a stick or something to work?
No.
Because 10 times it could be scary for some people.
Yeah, like here, like basically I'm the one who puts myself like my own pressure, right? Like I always want to succeed and I always want to go big. So basically in terms of KPIs, like we have obviously like the sales, like numbers of sales, number of orders, like new customer per month, times of deliveries, right? Like to know how many drivers do we need per town. So we have a pretty data segmented like analysis to know the KPIs per area, their reviews, the time spent per customer in the app. Like we know we try to track everything, right? To know, because we have the data to make it even more powerful for the customers, and looking for how to get them by to the next level, and that is only like seeing the KPIs. And that is one of the, I was gonna say, like that's one of the things that I learned from Dave too. Cash is king, right? Like you always need cash, and like I have to be worried about like finding how to keep cash, like working with the cash flow monthly, weekly. In our case, it's weekly, right? Like I pay everyone weekly. We do everything weekly here in the company. So it's how to maintain that cash, like that coming cash is pretty important. But like in the KPI sense, yeah, we have like all the systems. We need to know like the KPIs per week, know it daily, to know like per town, per person, like we can know like what is the average order per person, per customer, like having like all those data to know like how we are improving.
And you've got customers that have a demand for KPIs, you know, you count the restaurants, you know, the Pizza Huts, you've got requirements. McDonald's.
Exactly. The same restaurants like ask for those KPIs too, like how much time are they taking making the food? How much time is the driver taking from the restaurant to the customer? Like how much time is taking for the restaurant to accept the order? And there's like a lot of KPIs there that they see, like how many free deliveries did we get last month? How many orders under 15 minutes were done? So like they have their own like KPIs too.
Wow, that's pretty stressful.
Yeah.
But interesting at the same time. I'm glad that there are people that are doing that. Before we continue and we are approaching the end of our conversation, I would like to know, or as the same as the public, how do you think we can encourage more partnerships to be formed? I mean, this is a great example of a Puerto Rican partnering with with an investor that came to Puerto Rico, of course, other than that his family is also Puerto Rican, right? But he came and he decided to come here because economic opportunities as well. So probably it would not have been able to do so if you have not met Dave. So how can we encourage more of these partnerships to be forming opportunity zones, mergers and acquisitions, probably having them as an angel investors, having them as mentors also? So what do you think we can tell our audience?
Well, my perspective is, you know, finding talent to help you grow your business is it's the number one thing you do as a CEO of any company. You do it every day, you do it religiously, and you try to figure out who can help you be better, whether it's somebody in sales, somebody to mentor you, somebody to work with you. We have an interesting opportunity in Puerto Rico because the entire island's considered an opportunity zone. And we can actually create opportunity zone businesses. So people in the states that have capital gains that they would normally pay to the government, the federal government, when they sell their stock, they can instead invest in a Puerto Rico business that sits in an opportunity zone. And there's some nuances to how that investment is used, but there's a lot of money opportunities for people who are high wealth individuals to play to actually have a monetary gain and get a foothold in the Puerto Rico market. But I do believe that LinkedIn is a great tool. It's a great tool to LinkedIn and actually taking time to try to find people who have experience in something that you don't know. People are just willing to help you, and it's a matter of going out and talking to them. And that's I think the role of every good entrepreneur and every good leader is to just get out there and meet at least a couple of new people a day, and at least contact them, be in touch with them, and try to ask them questions and things that make your business grow.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say like always be honest with your investor. Like I think that's one of the things that helped me a lot with Dave. And like when we met, like I had another businesses and I went honest with him, like, hey, that team in that company wasn't that good. Just wait for your investment. So like I'm trying to maintain an open conversation with your investor, like be honest on what things are happening. Like it's, as I said before, it's gonna be like a marriage, right? So yeah, you have to work as a team in order to solve the problems of the company. Your investor is not your enemy. Like both of you want the same thing, that the company to be successful, right? So just having that mentality helps a lot on when something bad happens, like try to call him, try to maintain an open conversation. I know that it's hard, it's difficult, like especially during difficult times, but like it helps a lot on having that open conversation, honest conversation with your investors, right? And another thing will be like don't be scared to talk to a person, just not only, and yeah, you will think that he's an investor, he have a lot of money and all that thing, but think about what knowledge would that person bring to your company, more about also the money helps, but what knowledge, what experience, what kind of situation will that person help you with in the future, what next level can that person bring you, more about what benefits can bring also to the table. That helps a lot too.
There has been an if somebody has any other questions or something, feel free.
I just have to respond to your question about what can be done. I think it's partly a need in improving the educational process, where people begin to understand when we talk about partner or whatever, it doesn't have to be that sophisticated. It could be a formal agreement, it could be an informal agreement, it could be long-term, it could be short-term, it could be horizontal, it could be vertical, whatever. So there needs to be more of an educational process, teaching people the benefits of collaborating with other businesses. And luckily today, there's so much technology that facilitates the exchange of information and data, the real time. Right. We didn't have that years ago. So there's a need for government and the private sector organizations to exploit those opportunities and help educate entrepreneurs on it. Those resources are available.
Victor, that's a great point. I mean, I'll tell you, everybody on this seminar, if you just literally went to LinkedIn today, found one person that was interesting that could help you, and just ask them a question, they'll respond, right? And most people want to help each other. That's kind of what we do in business.
Exactly. It's to everybody's benefit.
And talking about education and the importance of it, David, this is a question that I would like to, to answer. There has been a lot of backlash for people that belong to the community of the Act 2022-60, and you've been part, but also having Puerto Rican family as well, because your kids are Puerto Ricans. They're Puerto Ricans, right?
They are.
Do you want to tell or share with the public what is it that, how can we, or how can the community might be able to change that? Or what would you like the Puerto Ricans to know about the Act 2022-60 community that maybe you hadn't had the opportunity to tell them? Because the thought of it is they come here to take things, and it's not like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, genuinely, when I came to the island, I had my own reasons, and they were personal. And obviously, the idea of being a resident was important, but that tax incentive was interesting, and I decided to participate in it. My biggest challenge with the invitation was, and at least what maybe the Act 22 community as a whole has seen, is people were invited to be part of a culture, part of an island, and the thought was that invitation meant that you would be, you figure out how to become part of the resident base, right? You become your neighbor. There would be an equal. You'd be equal, right, in the eyes of people, and I find that there's a constant perception that there is this group of people that are doing things kind of on their own and independent of everybody else, and that was honestly not what was sold to me as an Act 22 person. It was about becoming part of the community and being one. And so when I see the divisive behavior of government officials, or anybody for that matter, who says Act 22 people should pay a fair share and should do things and they should have more responsibility, it further divides the relationship that these people versus those people, and that's unfortunate, because realistically there's a true opportunity to create, and I think maybe some Act 22 people, I wouldn't maybe overstep their bounds in terms of some of the conversations that may have been had, and I've seen some of that in the island, but I think for the most part people came here to put their kids in the school systems and to influence parent-teacher organizations and to support business and invest in businesses and create them and hire people. And then suddenly they're pinpointed as, they're a problem and they need to be taxed more, and there needs to be a fairness. And I'm not sure why that's happened, but it definitely, I can tell you from a lot of the folks that I've talked to, it makes them feel unsafe. And that would be a sad state of affairs if people felt unsafe and not being able to participate in activities in such a beautiful place. So I hope we do less of that partitioning of our society and really look at, how can we create programs that help not just people who are part of Act 22 who may have actually moved to the island, but how do we do more for people in Puerto Rico? I really don't know why there aren't some good programs and tax incentives that help investors in Puerto Rico do more with their money. And I think that we should create equality. It shouldn't be a biased tax system, but it is incentive-based. And in those incentives, you can't necessarily, you can't bait and switch, right? I think the other things that we've seen Act 22's people's names posted out on the internet. So I've seen my name in the press in different places, and that's a bit of a challenge for anyone. I mean, imagine you pay your taxes, you do all the right things in life, and somebody puts you in the newspaper and says, guess what? You're a special person and you need to do things. And it's just, I mean, imagine if you all had your name put out in the newspaper because of your how you filed your taxes. And that's not what, at least that's not what I signed up for in terms of how I think. But nonetheless, I'm not moving on, and I continue to build companies in Puerto Rico. I just wish we'd create programs that actually worked across our community and helped not just people moving to the island, but people on the island who are willing to make investments in the ecosystem within the island itself.
Dave, that was great. Thank you for your, honesty, sincerity. Sorry if I cut you off guard.
No problem.
But thank you.
Yeah, sure.
So is there anything else, Jose and Dave, that you would like to share with our community here to encourage other partnerships and, and how to, just to partner with other entrepreneurs, or if there's anything that I missed?
You can never think big enough. Right? Never underestimate how big you can think, right? And what you can do and how you can invent. And honestly, there is so much potential for Puerto Rico for things that will be, that as the world changed, from building new types of organizations to solar energy, renewable energy systems, to agriculture, and agri-type of businesses, to even the world of cannabis. Imagine at some point, like the rest of the world, things become legal and you've got this wonderful environment that can grow things. There's such an opportunity for so many different types of business to evolve and we've got such a great core group of service capable people. I mean, people are just so service centric in Puerto Rico. It's so unlike any place else on the planet.
Well, thank you, Dave and Jose. A big applause to both of you. Thank you for accepting our invitation to share your story and, your story, of course, of Diamond Bite and the relationship that you have and how you can encourage other businesses or other people to establish businesses or partnerships like this, or be at least open to the idea, right? And not to get fear in the middle of those ideas. So I want to thank you all. Victor, you want to say something else before I
think it's very important
recording?
that I think it's very important that you personally be thanked and the panelists for raising this very important and timely subject, and hopefully there will be follow-up discussions later on.
Thank you.
Thank
These
you,
are
Annie.
going to be shared as well.